C, a typical middle school student in his second year, finds himself caught in a restless cycle. Sleep has become an elusive dream, and his mind is plagued by endless late-night thoughts. One evening, unable to bear the insomnia any longer, he decides to sneak out of his house. With a spark of freedom in his step, he heads to a nearby playground, hoping a swing set might offer some fleeting joy. C's classmates consider him an active and outgoing person. Recently, a girl had even confessed her feelings to him, but he had turned her down, unsure of what love really meant. Despite this external image of normalcy, C feels isolated, labeling himself a loner. His ongoing struggle with sleep leads him to scour the internet for solutions, but the advice to talk to friends or family feels out of reach. As he ventures through the quiet streets, his phone buzzes. Startled, he quickly checks it, fearing someone might have caught him sneaking out. To his relief, it's only a spam message about discount coupons. Still restless, C continues his walk, finding a vending machine along the way. Remembering that certain drinks might help with sleep, he impulsively considers buying a beer. Just as he reaches for it, a voice interrupts him. A girl, appearing out of the shadows, points out that he looks too young to be buying alcohol. Embarrassed, C stammers an apology and tries to walk away, but she grabs his arm. She reassures him she isn't going to call the police and instead guesses that he's having trouble sleeping. Surprised by her insight, C hesitantly accepts her offer to help. The girl, seemingly carefree, begins sharing her philosophy about nighttime and why people stay awake often because they're dissatisfied with their day. She gestures toward a group of men dozing on a park bench and suggests they seem content. Skeptical, C assumes they're just drunk. She cheerfully interacts with the men, asking about their night and encouraging them to head home and rest. Her boldness surprises C, who starts to feel oddly comforted by her energy. As they wander through the quiet streets, the girl asks if C is beginning to feel tired. He nods, unsure whether it's from her calming presence or the night air. She then invites him to her place, promising she has a way to help him sleep. Though hesitant, C agrees, curious about her strange confidence. Inside her apartment, she offers him a futon to lie down on and assures him that all she wants is to help him relax. When she removes her coat, C panics, thinking she might have ulterior motives. She laughs off his worries, saying they're just going to rest. Reluctantly, C lies down, planning to pretend to sleep before sneaking out. After a while, her soothing voice lulls him into actual slumber. However, his peace is short-lived. Moments later, he jolts awake to a sharp pain in his neck. The girl is leaning over him, her lips stained with blood. Alarmed, C asks what happened. She casually claims a giant mosquito bit him, but her bloodied mouth betrays her excuse. Realizing the truth, he blurts out, "Are you a vampire?" She admits it with a sly smile. Terrified, C worries he might become a vampire too. She reassures him that transformation doesn't happen unless the person falls in love with the vampire who bites them. This revelation leaves C both relieved and confused. She explains that for her, blood is merely sustenance. She has no interest in turning people into family or companions. As dawn approaches, they step outside. C reflects on his first night out, admitting he had once thought his life was fine as it was. But now, he realizes how mundane and unexciting it felt. The girl, whose name he learns is Nazuna, encourages him to explore life beyond his comfort zone. Though unsure of what lies ahead, C feels a strange sense of anticipation, knowing his nights will never be the same again. Nazuna tells C that staying awake until he feels genuinely fulfilled isn't the worst way to spend his nights. Inspired, C asks her to do him a favor. He wants her to turn him into a vampire. He's convinced that if he doesn't make a drastic change, he'll fall back into his monotonous daily life. Experiencing the thrill of the night has sparked a desire in him to become something more. He asks Nazuna to help him fall in love with her. Nazuna hesitates and explains that she's not fond of creating new vampires. The only thing she's willing to do is drink his blood. She adds that if he wants to fall in love with her, he can give it a shot, but she makes no promises. Finally, she introduces herself as Nazuna Nanakusa, revealing a bit more about herself. She shares an interesting fact: human blood tastes the richest at night, especially right before someone drifts off to sleep, as it's infused with the energy of the night. Curious, C asks why they're sitting on a rooftop. Nazuna grins and says it's because they're closer to the moon, letting the night's energy seep in. But simply staying awake won't cut it. Without warning, she kicks him off the roof, declaring that she's going to teach him how to enjoy the night. As C plummets, he panics, convinced he's about to die, but Nazuna swoops in and catches him midair. She reassures him that he's safe and tells him the night is meant for fun. Flying through the air with her, C feels exhilarated, his fear replaced by awe. Later, C sneaks out again to meet Nazuna. She reminds him that for vampires, drinking blood isn't just about survival, it can also feel deeply personal, even intimate, depending on the situation. Embarrassed, C blushes at the mention of intimacy. Nazuna teases him, then asks if he remembers why he came to see her. C nods, stating that he wants to become a vampire. He knows this means falling in love with her, which makes Nazuna slightly uneasy. Before they can discuss it further, C remembers something Nazuna mentioned earlier, her desire to taste his blood again. She shyly admits she was curious about having another sip. C agrees and tilts his neck, offering it to her. Surprised by his boldness, Nazuna calls him a pervert, but there's a playful tone in her voice. Though tempted, she decides to wait, saying the timing has to be right. One night, C ventures out again but can't find Nazuna anywhere. Frustrated, he decides to search closer to home. He reflects on their connection, realizing that even if she drinks his blood, it doesn't mean they have to meet every night. Just as he's about to give up, Nazuna suddenly appears, greeting him with her usual carefree attitude. Annoyed, C scolds her for making him search so long. She casually explains that she was wandering around, looking for someone else to feed on. This irritates C further. Why not just rely on him? Nazuna shrugs, saying every person's blood is unique, like different flavors of food. C brings up the topic of intimacy again, and Nazuna, feeling cornered, admits that she's shared blood connections with random people before. Embarrassed, she quickly changes the subject when C suggests exchanging contact information to avoid future searches. However, Nazuna doesn't own a phone. After some thought, she takes him to her home and digs out an old, bulky cell phone. She explains that she kept it as a backup but never used it because it's inconvenient. Smaller phones came out later, but she never bothered to upgrade. Feeling tired, Nazuna lies down and invites C to join her. While lying side by side, she playfully asks if she can drink his blood. C refuses, suggesting she find someone else instead since he'll eventually become a vampire anyway. Amused, Nazuna reveals she was actually searching for him earlier because his blood is uniquely delicious. Flattered, C offers his neck, and this time, Nazuna eagerly accepts. Another night, C struggles to find Nazuna again. When he finally does, he's annoyed at how long it took. To solve the problem, he presents her with a pair of wristwatch transceivers. Nazuna's eyes light up with excitement, finding them incredibly cool. She eagerly asks if they can play with them. C explains they're meant for communication, but Nazuna's enthusiasm doesn't waver. As they test the devices, C reminisces about his childhood, sharing how he used to buy transceivers and hide one somewhere, hoping someone would find it and call him. No one ever did, and when he finally checked, the other device was gone. Nazuna laughs at the bittersweet memory, finding it both sad and amusing. When Nazuna walks away to test the range, C calls her using the transceiver. She responds immediately, jokingly asking if she should attack a nearby enemy. C chuckles and tells her to hold off, feeling a sense of closeness as they talk. The simple gesture makes him feel like they're forming a deeper connection, though Nazuna brushes off the sentiment, calling it embarrassing. C and Nazuna spend more time together, and one evening, Nazuna brings him to the rooftop of his school. She remarks how the night transforms the way everything looks, making the school feel less oppressive. C agrees, appreciating the change. Playfully, Nazuna leans in and bites his neck, savoring his blood. She jokes about how delicious it is and teases him about being her school snack. C, still flustered, thinks about how Nazuna's carefree demeanor contrasts with his shyness about love and relationships. He realizes that, since Nazuna has no interest in having kids or creating lasting ties, she probably hasn't experienced deep connections with humans. When he hesitates to call her by her name, Nazuna playfully asks him to add Nazuna-san instead, making the moment lighthearted. He suggests they should take things slowly and just be friends for now. As C heads home, he notices his old transceiver and wonders about the one he lost years ago. To his surprise, it suddenly beeps. Turning around, he sees a girl holding the matching transceiver. She calls his name, startling him. It's Akira, someone he hadn't seen in years. Akira asks what he's doing out so late, and Nazuna, who had been nearby, jokes about whether C has any real friends. This makes C reflect on what it means to have a friend. C remembers how he had friends in his younger days but questions if someone he hasn't seen in years could still be called a friend. As he presses the call button on the transceiver, Akira explains she's kept it all this time because it was meaningful to her. She reveals that they drifted apart after C became more outgoing in 6th grade, making more friends while she remained on the sidelines. She'd been waiting for him to reach out with the transceiver but eventually decided to use it herself. C recalls leaving the transceiver in a random mailbox, but doesn't remember it being Akira's. Akira says she wasn't sure if he considered her a friend because he always seemed distant, but his gesture of giving her the transceiver spoke louder than words. C realizes he had misunderstood their relationship. Memories resurface of a time when Akira invited him to play with other kids, but he had been preoccupied watching ants carry insects. Instead of leaving, Akira had stayed by his side, joining him in observing the ants, showing her quiet loyalty. Acknowledging their past connection, C greets Akira warmly, noting how long it's been since they last spoke. He sees her wearing her school uniform and asks why she's out so early. Akira explains that she enjoys early morning walks before school, even at 4 a.m. Feeling awkward, C admits he's heading home from a long night out. Akira suggests meeting again at the same time the next day, and C agrees, feeling a sense of nostalgia. Back at Nazuna's place, C uses the transceiver to tell her about his meeting with Akira, admitting he actually did have a friend after all. Nazuna, annoyed and feigning indifference, hangs up and goes to sleep. A few nights later, Nazuna notices that C has started leaving right after she drinks his blood, around 3 a.m. She teases him, suggesting their relationship seems purely transactional now. C awkwardly brushes it off, but Nazuna jokes about whether he's sneaking off to meet someone else. Flustered, C denies it, but his nervous reaction makes Nazuna suspicious. C begins meeting Akira regularly, making their encounters part of his routine after spending time with Nazuna. They mostly chat casually, exchanging small talk, but C notices Akira seems quieter than she used to be. Curious, he asks if she enjoys spending time with him. Akira smiles and says she does, which makes C wonder if she might have feelings for him. One evening, while they're talking, C spots Nazuna watching them from a distance. When she approaches, C assumes she's upset, but to his surprise, Nazuna seems amused. With a mischievous grin, she asks if they're playing hanky-panky. C, confused by the term, looks to Akira, who asks if he knows Nazuna. Embarrassed and caught between the two, C struggles to explain their unusual connection. Nazuna tries to reassure Akira, saying her connection with C is purely physical, though her words and blush hint at some embarrassment. Akira, sensing something deeper, assumes they have feelings for each other. To dismiss the idea, Nazuna bites C's neck in front of her, revealing her vampire nature. Shocked but curious, Akira doesn't entirely believe Nazuna's claim, even after witnessing it. Afterward, Nazuna leads them both to a bar. She orders a beer, while Akira opts for breakfast and coffee. As they sit together, Akira turns to C and asks why he lets Nazuna drink his blood. She also wonders if it's connected to why he's been skipping school. C, struggling to explain, admits he doesn't really understand it himself. He used to enjoy school but lost interest somewhere along the way and didn't know how to handle it. Akira opens up in return, saying she doesn't always enjoy school or home life either, but sometimes she just has to push through. She confesses that she often worries about her friendships and whether they still matter. Seeing C again has made her happy, and she asks him to come back to school with her, saying it would make things more enjoyable for her. Nazuna listens quietly, finding Akira intriguing but still skeptical about her vampire story. As the conversation winds down, Nazuna abruptly leaves, leaving C to cover her unpaid tab. He pays and follows her outside, wondering if she's upset. Nazuna denies it, but her tone says otherwise. When C presses her, she gets irritated, throwing sarcastic insults before flying off into the night. Determined to make things right, C tries to follow her but loses her in the dark. Sitting down to collect himself, C remembers the transceiver and decides to call Nazuna. He apologizes, assuming she's mad about him keeping Akira a secret. Nazuna answers, clarifying that's not the reason for her frustration. C, unfamiliar with handling conflicts, feels unsure of what to do but just wants to make things right. Nazuna suddenly reappears, questioning whether making up is even necessary in their kind of relationship. She explains that she wasn't angry, just annoyed, and asks why he didn't respond when Akira invited him back to school. C admits he didn't know how to explain his focus on becoming a vampire to a human friend. Spotting a bit of blood from where C tripped earlier, Nazuna leans in and kisses him, sucking the blood. Teasing him, she notes that he referred to Akira as his human friend and wonders if that means he considers her his vampire friend. Before leaving, Nazuna tells C they'll meet again tomorrow, leaving him deep in thought about their strange relationship. C reflects on the kiss, realizing it's not something friends usually do. Meanwhile, Akira's day unfolds as usual, except for her lack of sleep. A classmate of hers has been staying up all night playing games, prompting the teacher to lecture the class on the importance of proper rest. After school, Akira sticks to her routine, going to bed early at 8:30 p.m. That night, C heads out again, unsure if he's ready to see Nazuna. While walking, he can't stop thinking about the kiss. He begins to wonder if it means he's in love with her, which would mean he's achieved his goal of becoming a vampire. Lost in his thoughts, he's startled when Nazuna appears, annoyed that she'd been waiting in an obvious spot for him. Feeling bold, C declares he's in love with her and invites her to bite him again. Nazuna obliges, drinking his blood as he grows excited, thinking his human life is finally over. However, when he asks if he's now a vampire, Nazuna shakes her head. She explains that a kiss doesn't necessarily signify love, it could just be lust or a fleeting moment of excitement. Embarrassed, C realizes he might have overreacted, but since it was his first kiss, he decides it's understandable. C assumes Nazuna must have kissed many people before, but she surprises him by admitting it was her first kiss as well. She shrugs it off, saying that friends sometimes kiss too. Still puzzled, C wonders what their relationship really is. Meanwhile, Akira wakes up unusually early, just before midnight. Unable to sleep, she gets dressed for school and heads out for a walk. C spots her and is surprised to see her up so late. Akira explains that her teacher's advice about sleep has been on her mind, but she insists she's been sleeping, she just woke up early. Planning to stay awake until school starts, she seems unbothered. C invites Akira to hang out with him and Nazuna, ready to see how the night unfolds. At Nazuna's apartment, C and Nazuna spend the evening playing Street Fighter 3, but Nazuna dominates every match, leaving C utterly defeated. She laughs and offers Akira a turn, teasing that if Akira wins, she'll get a kiss as a prize. Akira declines, clearly uncomfortable with the idea. Curious, Akira asks if Nazuna made the same offer to C, and Nazuna cheekily admits she did, though C quickly denies it. Nazuna adds with a smirk, "We don't need games for kisses anyway." Flustered, C tries to change the subject, while Akira, wanting to support him, declares she disapproves of C hanging out with someone as inappropriate as Nazuna. Nazuna shrugs off the criticism, calmly suggesting they try a different game. She pulls out a dating simulator, where 3 animated girls ask the player to join them at school. C, playing as the main character, rejects all their advances, explaining that he doesn't enjoy being part of groups. Then, a shy girl accidentally bumps into his character, quickly apologizing before leaving without much interaction. Intrigued, C comments that he liked her. Nazuna grins mischievously and teases him, asking if he has a thing for quiet girls with certain assets. C blushes furiously, while Akira chuckles, realizing that C hasn't changed much and isn't doing anything too suspicious during his nights out. As the clock approaches 4 a.m., Nazuna announces it's time to sleep so she can drink some blood. Akira is startled by the idea of them sleeping together, but C quickly clarifies that it's not as inappropriate as it sounds. Nazuna, however, playfully quips that tonight is different because it's a guy-girl-girl night. The 3 end up lying on the futon together, but Akira feels too self-conscious and insists on leaving. Nazuna reminds her it's raining and she doesn't have an umbrella, so Akira reluctantly stays. Lying there, Akira watches with growing annoyance as Nazuna drinks C's blood. She mutters that it's uncomfortable to see, while C regrets not asking Nazuna to hold off. Nazuna, unbothered, explains that it's just a playful way to add excitement to their night. Curious, Akira asks why Nazuna drinks his blood and why C allows it. Nazuna casually explains it's about supply and demand. C has delicious blood, and he doesn't seem to mind. C adds that it's part of his goal to eventually become a vampire. Akira is surprised but thinks it's nice that C has a goal, especially since he usually avoids talking about his future. When Akira guesses C might already be a vampire, he corrects her, explaining that he can only transform if he falls in love with Nazuna. This revelation embarrasses Nazuna, who blushes and admits that while she enjoys teasing, romantic talk makes her shy. She quickly changes the subject, telling them all to sleep. Akira, still uncomfortable, claims she's only there because of the rain and isn't tired. Nazuna encourages her to lie down anyway, saying she might fall asleep naturally. C apologizes to Akira for dragging her into his unusual night, explaining that he wanted to show her how he spends his time. Akira asks if he enjoys these nights, and C admits he does. Noticing his nervousness, Akira reassures him, telling him to relax and not to worry if their hands accidentally touch. She adds that even if he becomes a vampire, she'll still want to be his friend, but she'll keep pushing him to go back to school, because even vampires need education. Eventually, Akira falls asleep, and about 4 hours later, she wakes up in a panic, realizing she's late for school. She quickly says goodbye to C and wishes him a good day. Nazuna, half asleep, asks if Akira rested well, remarking that people usually sleep better when their day is fulfilling. Later in the evening, Nazuna wakes up feeling restless. She plays a video game to pass the time but gets frustrated when she can't beat a level. She checks on a delivery she's been expecting, only to find a failed delivery notice because it arrived earlier than scheduled. Bored and unsure what to do, she heads out for a walk around 8 p.m. The streets seem gloomy, and everyone she passes looks preoccupied. Spotting a stray cat, she stops to play with it, but the cat's unpleasant smell lingers on her hands. By 10 p.m., Nazuna decides to visit a public bath. At the front desk, she leaves her transceiver with the attendant, asking to be notified if it rings while she's inside. In the bath, she grumbles about vampires not having reflections, which makes it hard to see herself in the mirror. Suddenly, her transceiver beeps, and she hurries out, dripping wet, to answer the call. Outside, she meets C, who immediately notices she looks different. When she explains she just took a bath, C mentions he'd like to take one too. Nazuna suggests they go together, saying she didn't get to finish her soak because of his call. Amused and slightly flustered, C follows her, wondering what other surprises the night will bring. After the bath, C finds himself overwhelmed by a swirl of emotions, unsure if it's Nazuna's fresh hairstyle or the lingering heat from the bath that's throwing him off. Struggling to clear his thoughts, he asks Nazuna to drink his blood. She agrees, and as she feeds, C feels the familiar calm settle over him. It's something he's come to appreciate, how her blood drinking helps him focus, especially when his feelings are all over the place. This time though, Nazuna seems hungrier than usual, taking more than normal. Feeling drained, C suggests they find a place to rest. Nazuna leads him to a nearby spot, but as they enter, C quickly realizes it's designed for couples, complete with a romantic atmosphere that makes him blush. Embarrassed, he tries to play it cool, but Nazuna picks up on his emotions. With a teasing grin, she hints that she can sense how he feels through the flavor of his blood. "Maybe my new look is messing with your head again," she jokes. C admits that while he's trying to develop feelings for her, thinking romantically about a friend feels strange. Nazuna, unfazed, explains that his conflicting emotions actually enhance the taste of his blood, making it richer. She laughs, enjoying the moment, before noticing the room's entertainment options. She points out that couples here can watch adult videos and jokingly suggests they blast one at full volume to annoy the neighbors. Her mood quickly sours, though, when she realizes they'd have to pay for the videos. As they chat, C starts to wonder how many people Nazuna has drunk blood from. He doesn't ask directly, not wanting to know too much about her past, but Nazuna seems to sense his curiosity. She casually mentions someone she used to feed from, which sparks an unexpected pang of jealousy in C. Picking up on his reaction, Nazuna teases him further, adding that she used to drink from women too but now only feeds on him. C, still feeling awkward, asks if she's ever had someone like him before, a regular, consistent source of blood. Nazuna admits she has. C jokingly suggests she might have pretended to offer adult services, but Nazuna is visibly offended. To set the record straight, she explains that she used to work as a professional relaxation therapist. Skeptical, especially after she reveals she wore a nurse's uniform, C asks for proof. Nazuna pulls out an old price list from her job, showing him her rates. Intrigued, C signs up for a massage session. As Nazuna works on him, she explains various pressure points and how they help the body relax and sleep better. Just as she's about to feed on him again, the doorbell rings. Annoyed, Nazuna checks and realizes she forgot to turn off the open sign. The visitor is a former customer who had been interested in a massage. Feeling too lazy to deal with it herself, Nazuna turns to C and asks him to handle it. Reluctantly, C answers the door and lets the client in, mentioning that the boss is resting. When he returns to Nazuna, she's engrossed in a video game and casually mentions that the client is Kosumi Shirakawa, a 24-year-old office worker who seems exhausted from her day. Nazuna insists C give the massage, arguing that they can't afford to turn away paying customers since she's been neglecting work to spend time with him. Though C protests, Nazuna reminds him that fun nights out cost money, and she had even paid for their hotel earlier. She sweetens the deal by offering to pay him 2,000 yen for his efforts and teasingly promises a kiss as a bonus. Meanwhile, Kosumi walks to Nazuna's place, tired and frustrated after a long evening of work drinks she didn't enjoy. She would have preferred to be at home or even working late. Remembering how relaxed she felt after her last visit to Nazuna's, she decides to stop by. To her surprise, a boy C welcomes her in. After a brief wait, C returns and nervously announces he'll be giving the massage. As he works, Kosumi asks about his age and is shocked when he says he's 14. She comments that she didn't have to work at his age and assumes there must be more to his story. Curious, she asks why he's working. C hesitates, then explains that he needs the money, but also admits he has another goal: he wants to keep enjoying the night. Kosumi, though puzzled, finds his honesty refreshing. As the session continues, C starts to feel more confident, though he can't help but think about the promised kiss and the yen waiting for him at the end of the night. Kosumi listens intently, relating to the feeling of seeking solace in the night. She recalls how, 10 years ago, she found peace in the stillness of the dark, treating it as her personal escape. Curious, she asks C why he stopped going to school. C admits that he simply got bored with it. Feeling emotionally drained herself, Kusumi begins to open up, confessing that while she likes her job, the stress from dealing with her boss, co-workers, and forced social events after work has worn her down. Tears well up as she admits she dreads returning to the office or enduring another fake cheerful gathering. Kusumi explains how exhausting her life has become, sharing that she gets calls from work at ridiculous hours and feels trapped by the expectation to comply. As she speaks, sees a reflection of himself and her struggles. He briefly wonders if he'd still get paid if she left early, but quickly realizes her situation is more important. Taking a serious tone, he steps in front of the door and firmly tells her she isn't leaving. Tonight, she'll stay and enjoy the freedom of the night. Determined to make her stay, C calls Nazuna for backup. Within moments, Nazuna appears, phasing dramatically through the wall. C tells her not to let Kusumi leave, and Nazuna, with her trademark mischief, agrees. She instructs C to open the window. Confused but compliant, C opens it, and before Kusumi can react, Nazuna grabs her and tosses her out. Kusumi screams, thinking her life is about to end, but C leaps out after her. Nazuna swoops down to catch them both midair, safely landing on the ground below. Shaken but unharmed, Kusumi looks at them in disbelief. C apologizes for the wild approach and firmly tells her she shouldn't have to endure a job that brings her to tears. Kusumi argues that C doesn't understand work isn't like school. Adults have to tolerate unpleasant situations, even if they hate them. C, in turn, declares his dream of becoming a vampire. He explains that Nazuna, as a vampire, isn't bound by the same rules as humans. He envies her freedom and wants to live the same way. He then criticizes her boss for calling her at 2 a.m., labeling it unreasonable. Kusumi, taken aback by his perspective, laughs despite herself. She admits she envies his carefree attitude and finds his reasoning amusing. As they stroll down the quiet streets, Kusumi reflects on the fun she had that night, but insists she can't live like that forever. She has responsibilities. She wishes C luck with his dream and even jokes about wanting to become a vampire herself. C, emboldened, promises her that if he becomes a vampire, he'll turn her into one too. Kusumi smiles at his boldness and prepares to leave. Watching her go, Nazuna teases C about making such a grand promise. C, confident, brushes it off, declaring that if he can make Kusumi fall in love with him, the rest will be easy. He boasts that girls usually like him, which earns a sarcastic smirk from Nazuna. As the night stretches on, Nazuna asks C what they should do next. He suggests several activities: karaoke, darts, movies, skateboarding, or the arcade, but she rejects each one. Finally, he proposes a nighttime pool. Nazuna seems intrigued, and they head to a nearby club with an outdoor pool. However, the scene isn't what C imagined. It's crowded and loud, and he quickly grows uncomfortable. While waiting for Nazuna to return with drinks, C finds himself wondering how she would look in a swimsuit. When she finally comes back, she's wearing her usual clothes over her swimsuit, saying it's underneath. As she heads off to grab their drinks, C notices how much attention she's drawing. Two men approach her, trying to flirt. Seeing C's reaction, Nazuna decides to tease him. She tells the men that while she came with someone, he might have left her. The jealousy bubbling inside C pushes him to walk over and pull her away. Back together, C grumbles about the pool, complaining that it's too crowded and that he doesn't like how casually strangers approach her. Nazuna chuckles and asks if he wants to swim somewhere else. Before he can answer, she grabs him and takes off into the air. Moments later, they land by the pool at his school. Without hesitation, Nazuna leaps into the water, fully clothed, surprising C. She apologizes for teasing him earlier, but he assures her it's fine. As they float in the quiet pool, Nazuna leans in and drinks his blood. Lost in his thoughts, C wonders about the feelings that have been building up inside him all day. Gathering his courage, he asks Nazuna to share what's on her mind. As C walks through the bustling streets, he feels a wave of anxiety, worried he might bump into someone he knows. His fears come true when he hears someone call his name. Hesitating, he turns to see Kusumi, who smiles and says she finished work early. She offers to buy him a drink as thanks for the other day. Before he can respond, rain starts pouring, and C quickly seeks cover. He notices people gathering under awnings and in smoking areas, trying to stay dry. Nearby, a guy awkwardly flirts with a girl, only to be rejected. The girl notices C watching and waves at him. As C opens his drink, the girl approaches and asks what he thought of the scene. She reveals she saw him watching and adds that the guy even offered her money. Surprised, C comments that it must have been annoying. The girl, however, laughs and admits she was actually waiting for someone to approach her. She enjoys toying with guys who hit on her to pass the time, but clarifies she wasn't interested in the last one. C finds her attitude risky and glances at her school uniform, wondering if he recognizes it. She catches him looking and teasingly asks if he wants a closer look. Embarrassed, C quickly apologizes. The girl snatches his drink, finishes it in one gulp, and starts walking away. Annoyed, C chases after her, demanding his drink back. She laughs, saying it's gone now, and confides that her life has been dull lately. C, trying to comfort her, tells her things will get better. She unexpectedly hugs him and thanks him, calling him by his full name. As she leans in close, C freezes, realizing she's about to bite him. Before she can, Nazuna appears, slashing the girl's arm with her claws and declaring that C is her prey. The girl, unfazed, smirks and remarks that rumors of Nazuna spending time with a human are spreading. Casually, she reattaches her severed arm and declares that if Nazuna isn't going to turn C into a vampire, she'll have to kill him. Lunging at C, she's intercepted by Nazuna, who engages her in a fight. As C steps back in fear, another girl suddenly appears behind him and blocks his path. She tells Nazuna they're borrowing C before flying off with him. Nazuna, furious, defeats the first girl and demands to know where they've taken him. The other girl takes C to a secluded location where 3 more women are waiting. They look him over, surprised by how young he is. It quickly becomes clear that they're all vampires. They offer him a choice: pick one of them. To turn him into a vampire, join their group, and avoid being killed for knowing too much about their world. Nico Harata, the apparent leader, introduces herself and the others: Midori Koko, Hatsuka Suzushiro, Kabira Honda, and the girl who brought him, Siri Ko. C also notices the girl from earlier, who he now knows is Siri. Nico lays out his options and tells him to make his choice. To everyone's shock, C confidently declares that he chooses Nazuna. The vampires exchange surprised looks, and Nico, clearly offended, points out that she and the others are far more popular than Nazuna, who's notoriously bad at romance. Midori chuckles and teases Nico, saying that C is likely to fall for Nazuna anyway. Nico, visibly irritated, retorts that cherry boys like C don't usually go for her style, which makes C laugh. Realizing they think he's inexperienced, C openly confirms that he is, surprising both Midori and Nico. Trying to win him over, Nico insists she'd be a perfect match for him. C comments that she reminds him of Nazuna, not in looks but in her straightforward and playful attitude. This only upsets Nico further. C starts wondering why Nazuna isn't as popular among the vampires. The others explain that Nazuna doesn't try to attract humans like they do. They use charm and manipulation to create their vampire families, while Nazuna keeps to herself and doesn't bother with such tactics. Their gossip annoys Nazuna, who arrives just in time to overhear their chatter. Confronting Siri, Nazuna coldly states she has no interest in their games. Siri counters that Nazuna's reluctance to turn C into a vampire is putting him at risk. Midori suggests that Nazuna might secretly want to make C her family, while Siri speculates that he might just be a fleeting distraction. Siri warns that if Nazuna doesn't act soon, C will either need to be turned or eliminated. Midori, shifting the mood, asks C what his ideal type of girl is, clearly trying to charm him. She explains that she likes to get close to people by understanding their preferences. Sitting beside him, she asks if Nazuna is his type. C bluntly responds no, surprising everyone. When Midori asks if she herself is his type, she nervously adds that it's fine if he doesn't answer, fearing rejection. The other vampires expect him to say yes, but C shocks them by firmly stating no. He elaborates that he doesn't really understand what it means to like someone romantically, leaving the vampires puzzled. Meanwhile, Nazuna, standing off to the side, watches quietly, her expression unreadable as she listens to his response. Hatsuka steps forward, reminding C that if he doesn't choose one of them, they'll have no choice but to kill him. Nico quickly adds that while they'd prefer not to resort to violence, they can't allow him to continue seeing Nazuna if he isn't serious about becoming a vampire. In a firm voice, C declares that he does want to become a vampire, leaving the group stunned. They immediately ask if Nazuna is aware of his decision. C explains that it's tied to his desire to fall in love with her. As he speaks, Nazuna appears in the doorway, having overheard everything. The other vampires turn to her, expecting anger or indignation, but Hatsuka notices that she's blushing and looking flustered, unable to say a word. C approaches Nazuna to check on her, but she sharply tells him not to talk to her. The other girls jump in, critiquing her reaction and pointing out how it highlights why she's unpopular. Frustrated, Nazuna insists that she's taking C and leaving, but the group blocks her path. They question how she plans to make him fall in love with her, with Kabira noting that Nazuna has never formed a vampire family before. Kabira teasingly offers to spend time with C when Nazuna is unavailable, but Nazuna glares at her and warns her to keep her hands off her prey or face dire consequences. Nico steps in to calm things down, stating that they're just curious why C is so important to Nazuna. C explains that Nazuna found his blood particularly delicious, and that they made a deal she would suck his blood and eventually turn him into a vampire. Midori remains skeptical, suggesting that Nazuna might just be making excuses and has no real intention of turning him. C defends Nazuna, stating that she encouraged him to fall in love with her as part of the process. Nico chuckles, saying that's a decent start, while Hatsuka speculates that it's just Nazuna's way of hiding her embarrassment. Nico assures everyone there's no immediate need to harm C, but warns that if too much time passes, things could change. C, determined, boldly states that time won't be an issue because he's committed to becoming a vampire no matter what. The vampires exchange surprised glances. Puzzled by their reaction, C asks what's wrong. Nico explains that there's a catch. From the moment a vampire first drinks someone's blood, they have only 1 year to transform into a vampire. If they fail, they lose the chance forever. The revelation shocks C, and he turns to Nazuna for confirmation. She casually admits she forgot to mention it. Nazuna, brushing off the tension, suggests they leave, but not before reminding C that he still hasn't received his promised reward for the massage. To everyone's surprise, she leans in and kisses him, leaving the other vampires speechless. As they walk away, C reflects on how unpredictable Nazuna is, even for a vampire, but he feels lucky to have met her. Later, C shares the time limit news with Akira, who is deeply troubled by it. C agrees, admitting that a single year feels far too short when most people spend years planning their futures. However, Akira points out a bigger concern: humans who know too much about vampires are seen as threats. If C doesn't become a vampire within the year, the vampires may kill him to protect their secrets. The weight of her words sinks in, and C starts to wonder if he only has a year left to live. The next morning, Akira arrives at school and is surprised to find her classmate Maharu lying on the stairs. He apologizes, explaining that he stayed up all night having fun and fell asleep there. Always the diligent student, Akira questions why he was out so late. Maharu hesitates before admitting that he likes someone, but they can only spend time together at night. Akira guesses it must be an older woman and jokingly adds, "I hope she's not a vampire." Maharu is intrigued by her comment and asks what she means, but she brushes it off. Maharu then wonders aloud why C hasn't been coming to school lately. Akira confirms his absence, and Maharu nods, saying he suspected something was going on. He expresses a desire for the three of them to hang out again, like they used to. Akira, however, looks puzzled. She asks Maharu when the three of them ever spent time together, catching him off guard. He insists that they were friends, but Akira coolly explains that she has a lot of friends and doesn't recall any special moments with just the three of them. Leaving him stunned, she heads to class. Maharu tells Akira he'll try to talk to C himself, but if he can't, he asks her to let C know that he's worried about him. Akira recalls a time when she and C were watching ants together, and Maharu joined them, curious about what they found so fascinating. Back then, Maharu invited C to play baseball, promising to teach him the rules since C didn't know how to play. It was one of the few moments they had shared as kids. Later that evening, C runs into Siri on the streets. When he looks ready to bolt, Siri stops him, teasing that she's heard rumors about his delicious blood and wants to know what it tastes like. They start chatting, and C admits he's struggling to understand how to fall in love. Siri, amused by his innocence, introduces herself as the love master and claims to have foolproof advice to help a boy and girl get closer. Taking Siri's advice to heart, C heads to Nazuna's place and nervously asks her out on a date. Nazuna brushes him off, retreating back inside to play video games. Frustrated but determined, C turns off her console, which irritates her. She grumbles about how modern games have save points, unlike older ones, but C insists they go out. After some reluctance, Nazuna agrees. For their first stop, C takes her to a movie theater, but things go awry when he picks a romantic comedy. Nazuna, clearly unimpressed, accuses him of trying to annoy her. Embarrassed, C apologizes and they leave early. Outside, C checks a piece of paper with a list of date ideas Siri had given him. The next suggestion is to visit a cafe and discuss the movie. As they walk, C awkwardly asks Nazuna what she thought of the film. Annoyed, she asks if someone put him up to this, suspecting Siri's involvement. When Nazuna catches sight of the paper and realizes it's Siri's list, her irritation turns to anger. She abruptly ends the date and storms off. Later, while playing video games, Nazuna's mood softens. Feeling hungry, she looks at the date ideas again and decides to give the last suggestion a try. She flies to C's place and invites him to join her for a meal while enjoying the city lights. Taking him in her arms, she soars over the skyline, pondering what counts as a date. She concludes that they've already been on countless dates just by doing what they enjoy together. Mid-flight, she drinks C's blood, savoring the moment. While searching for Nazuna, C spots Maharu with a group of friends, another boy, and 2 girls. At first, C freezes, unsure if he should approach, but when Maharu doesn't notice him, he relaxes and observes from a distance. Just as C thinks Maharu hasn't changed, Maharu suddenly recognizes him and waves him over. They move to a quieter spot, and Maharu casually remarks that it's only natural he would recognize C, their friends, after all. C reflects on the nature of friendship, realizing he considers both Akira and Maharu his friends. He acknowledges feeling more awkward around Akira because she's a girl, but with Maharu, everything feels easier. He admires Maharu's seemingly perfect life, good grades, athletic skills, and popularity, and feels genuinely happy to be called his friend. As they chat, Akira arrives and asks Maharu if he's heading home. Maharu says he's not, and Akira reveals that she's actually going out. She tells Maharu that C has been skipping school to spend time with a girl, encouraging him to convince C to return to class. Maharu, curious, asks C if hanging out with this girl is fun. C smiles and says it is. Just then, C gets a message and excuses himself, apologizing as he leaves. Afterward, Akira comments that C seems to act a little cheesy around Maharu, likely because he looks up to him. C, however, insists that Maharu is a role model for everyone. Akira decides to head home to get some rest. Meanwhile, Nazuna continues looking for C and accidentally crosses paths with Maharu. Before they can speak, C shows up and takes Nazuna's hand, pointing out that she's the one who tends to wander off, not him. Nearby, Siri gets a message from a boy but ignores it, having grown bored of him. Spotting C, she rushes over and hugs him. Nazuna, feeling a wave of jealousy, kicks Siri in the face, knocking her down. C protests, saying Siri hasn't done anything wrong, but Nazuna coldly claims her leg acted on its own. As Siri gets up, she and Nazuna start bickering. Siri insists she has no intention of harming C, but Nazuna demands to know why she's even interested in befriending him. Nazuna points out how rare it is for a vampire to seek friendship without wanting to drink blood. After a tense pause, Siri admits Nazuna is right, she only approached C to mess with him. As Siri walks away, she gets another text from the same guy, which only adds to her irritation. Before she can ignore it, C catches up to her and asks if she's really okay. He offers to listen if she wants to talk, pointing out that she mentioned how life hasn't been enjoyable lately. Siri brushes off his concern, claiming she made it up, but C doubts her honesty and gently suggests that even vampires might have their struggles. Siri smirks and, in an attempt to change the subject, invites him to karaoke. C hesitates but eventually agrees. Once they're inside, Siri tells him she's very popular but finds it exhausting to deal with all the attention from guys. C empathizes, admitting he feels similar frustration with people who treat romance as the ultimate goal in life. Siri jokingly suggests that if things ever get overwhelming, she can just get rid of those guys for good. When they start singing, Siri expects C to join in right away, but he spends too much time scrolling through the song list. Annoyed, she asks why he's stalling, and C explains he hasn't been keeping up with modern music. He eventually picks a song, an older track he remembers liking. After he sings, Siri is intrigued, noting it's her first time hearing it and asking if there are more songs by the same artist. Their moment is interrupted by loud banging on the door. C assumes it's a mix-up, but Siri casually remarks that it's probably one of her admirers. As the knocking continues, coupled with someone calling her name, C grows uneasy. Siri, unfazed, reassures him that this happens often and shrugs off the guy's persistence as a nuisance. C starts to question whether this is part of the problem Siri hinted at earlier. She rolls her eyes and sarcastically asks if he has any brilliant advice for dealing with such guys. Siri suggests the simplest solution is to kill them, saying it would save everyone the trouble. C finds her suggestion alarming and argues that while extreme measures might be justified in rare cases, she should try reasoning with him first. Before they can decide, the man bursts into the room, interrupting their conversation. His intense gaze and aggressive posture immediately puts C on edge. Siri sighs, clearly annoyed, and declares she's tired of dealing with him. She lunges at the man, but C grabs her mid-air and pulls the man out of the room. Furious, Siri warns C that if he gets in her way, she won't hesitate to kill him too. C ignores her threat and ushers the guy out of the building. Once they're safe, C asks the man about his relationship with Siri. The man seems conflicted, explaining how they first met one day. He tripped and lost his glasses, and Siri helped him find them. Afterward, she invited him for a drink, where they chatted about life. He remembered sharing his thoughts about the phrase love is blind, comparing it to the chemical effects of dopamine on the brain. He admits that while he knows he's not her boyfriend or even her closest friend, he can't stop wanting to be around her. C listens thoughtfully and suggests that the man may have sensed Siri's lack of interest but chose to overlook it. Just as the man starts to reflect on C's words, Siri appears, declaring that it's time to end things since she's a vampire. C steps in, refusing to let her harm him. As Siri charges, Nazuna arrives and intervenes, stopping Siri in her tracks. Nazuna, holding Siri back, reveals they've been listening to the entire conversation through a device in C's watch. Siri protests, claiming she has no intention of hurting C, so Nazuna should let her go. Unmoved, Nazuna presses her, curious about why she suddenly wants to kill this man. The man panics and pleads with them to stop. He blames himself, saying it wasn't Siri's fault. He forgot the boundaries of their relationship and allowed himself to develop feelings for her. Siri, visibly irritated, clarifies that she never intended to turn him into part of her vampire family. She only spent time with him to alleviate her boredom. Siri goes on to explain how she's grown tired of creating vampire families and the inevitable entanglement of romance and human interactions. She admits that while she initially enjoyed the attention, it has become suffocating, and she now avoids turning people into vampires altogether. Nazuna, with a smirk, teases Siri for complicating her own life, adding that if she hates human attachment so much, she shouldn't go out of her way to attract it. Siri glares at her but doesn't argue, leaving C to wonder what really drives Siri's behavior. Siri struggles with maintaining platonic relationships, often acting in ways that inadvertently make people fall for her. She tells Akihito that they should stop seeing each other and act as if nothing ever happened. Watching this, C realizes how complicated Siri's personality is but appreciates that Akihito is mature about the situation. Still, he finds it ridiculous that Siri claims to value their friendship, yet considered killing Akihito to avoid complications. C suggests that instead of making drastic decisions, they should openly talk about their feelings as friends. Siri hesitates but eventually explains to Akihito that she's a vampire and that relationships like the one between Nazuna and C are rare exceptions. Such bonds are usually forbidden because they rarely work out. Despite her insistence that they part ways, she begins to cry, confessing that she doesn't want to lose their friendship because she genuinely enjoys it. Akihito responds by admitting that he's had fun too, but has also developed feelings for her. He boldly asks if she'd consider making him part of her vampire family. When Siri asks if he's certain, he confidently affirms his love for her. C watches the exchange with mixed emotions, feeling it's unfair since he desires the same thing with Nazuna. Sensing his frustration, Nazuna reassures him, saying there's no rush, they have time. For now though, she wants to suck his blood. In a surprising turn, Siri, now in a better mood, suggests they celebrate by going to karaoke with her new family. Meanwhile, at a nearby maid cafe, Midori receives a message from a coworker who can't make it to their shift. Unsure of what to do, she considers asking her vampire friends for help but worries it might turn into a popularity contest. Just then, she spots Nazuna and C passing by. Excited, Midori decides Nazuna would be perfect for the job since she's not as popular with men. Nazuna reluctantly agrees to help and puts on a maid uniform. She wonders what C will do while she's working, and Midori suggests he come in as a customer, promising to cover his tab. Determined to prove how cute she can be, Midori decides to use this opportunity to practice with Nazuna, coaching her on how to properly greet customers. When C walks into the cafe as a pretend customer, Midori greets him enthusiastically, calling him master before passing the spotlight to Nazuna. However, Nazuna forgets her lines and simply says, "Hey." Midori, breaking character for a moment, scolds her for ruining the atmosphere and reminds her that she's being paid for this. Realizing the importance of the situation, Nazuna tries harder but still struggles to embody the cheerful maid persona. Midori demonstrates by serving another customer, acting bubbly and cute as she pours coffee, earning compliments from the guest. Meanwhile, another maid, Arisa, brings C his order and introduces herself. When C mentions he's there because of Midori, Arisa hushes him and insists he refer to her as Midori-chan in the cafe. Curious, Arisa asks if C is a fan of Midori, but he denies it. She explains that Midori quickly became the top maid after starting dethroning Arisa herself. Although she tries to sound indifferent, it's clear she's still a little bitter. After the shift, Midori decides to take a picture of Nazuna to post on the cafe's social media account. As she scrolls through previous posts, she notices some inappropriate photos taken from angles revealing too much of the maids. When C checks them out, he zooms in on one, prompting both Midori and Nazuna to call him a pervert. C quickly clarifies that none of the photos are of Midori, which surprises her. He corrects himself, saying all the photos feature Arisa. This leads Midori to speculate that someone at the cafe might have a preference for Arisa. Midori, impressed by C's ability to recognize Arisa just from the pictures, decides they need to catch the person responsible for taking these inappropriate photos. She asks for C's help, and he agrees. The next day, while at the cafe, C examines the photos again and notices one where Arisa is changing clothes. Just then, Arisa walks in and sees him staring at the photo. Embarrassed, she scolds him, saying it's inappropriate to look at such pictures. C quickly apologizes and explains he's trying to figure out how someone managed to take such a shot. As he looks around, he notices a window leading to a balcony and starts piecing things together. Arisa mentions needing to change for work, prompting C to excuse himself and step outside. Once in the hallway, he examines the balcony door and finds it locked. With Nazuna on her break, he asks for her help to investigate. Nazuna grabs him, leaps gracefully, and lands on the balcony. Looking around, C observes that the locked door means anyone accessing the balcony must have exceptional physical abilities, someone like Nazuna. Just then, Arisa opens the window and, startled to see them, asks what they're doing. Nazuna explains they're trying to catch the culprit behind the photos and urges Arisa to continue changing. Once she leaves, C takes a few pictures of the balcony to analyze the angles, but something still feels off. Nazuna, seeing his frustration, suggests posing for a test photo to replicate the setup. However, the result is unconvincing. C mutters about how taking good pictures requires practice and an understanding of angles and lighting. He begins piecing the clues together and instructs Nazuna to call everyone back after their shift, confident that the culprit will return to the scene. Midori, impressed by C's determination, agrees to help. However, as time passes and no one arrives, C's confidence starts to wane. Finally, they hear footsteps. C quickly tells Midori and Nazuna to hide, squeezing themselves into a locker to observe the scene. Arisa enters the room, and Nazuna casually mentions she's the last one there before heading home. While hiding, C whispers to Midori that the photos were always taken when Arisa was alone, typically after hours. Suddenly, they hear the window creak open. Peeking through the locker door, C sees Arisa preparing to take a selfie. C steps out, apologizing for interrupting and asking Arisa why she's been taking photos of herself. Midori, intrigued, asks how C figured it out. He explains that the photos were too polished for someone taking them secretly. The framing, lighting, and angles were deliberate. Moreover, the lack of underskirt shots, which are common in voyeuristic photos, suggested they were staged. Midori connects the dots first, pointing out that before she became the cafe's top maid, Arisa held that title. Perhaps Arisa felt frustrated or overlooked. Caught, Arisa admits her actions. She staged the peeping photos to regain attention and prove to herself that she was still popular. Feeling both embarrassed and vulnerable, she expresses a desire to quit, saying she's tired of seeking validation in such a desperate way. Midori reassures her, explaining that many people who work at maid cafes are motivated by a desire for recognition. It's not inherently bad. She encourages Arisa to embrace her individuality and find healthier ways to shine, reminding her that self-worth isn't tied to her ranking at work. Touched by the support, Arisa begins to reflect on her actions and consider a better path forward. Nazuna, surprisingly pleased with her earnings at the maid cafe, decides to take occasional shifts there. One evening, while on her day off, Arisa visits the cafe and sits next to C, opening up about her past obsession with selfies. She reminisces about spending entire days taking pictures, unaware of how much time had passed. Arisa shares how sending a selfie to Midori, who responded with genuine positivity, had boosted her confidence. Inspired by Midori's kind words, Arisa begins to appreciate herself without needing validation from others. Meanwhile, Nazuna, motivated by her success at the cafe, invests her earnings into improving her cuddle buddy business. She tasks C with scouting for potential clients. Wandering the city, C looks for people who seem particularly tired or stressed. His search leads him to a woman smoking on a bridge, her exhaustion evident in her posture. C approaches her, commenting on how tired she looks, and asks if she'd like to chat. To his surprise, she agrees and they head to a nearby coffee shop. C quickly clarifies that he's not trying to hit on her, which prompts a small, wistful laugh from the woman. She admits she'd briefly hoped he might be interested in her, as she'd been feeling lonely. Though slightly awkward, the conversation begins to flow, and C realizes the importance of connecting with people in ways that feel genuine and uplifting. C explained to the woman that he was scouting clients for a cuddle buddy service tailored for people struggling with sleep deprivation. He clarified that the cuddling would be handled by the business owner, not himself. Amused, the woman joked about labor laws, saying he shouldn't be working such late hours in a line of business like that, and teased that she could report him. C felt a jolt of panic but relaxed when she laughed, advising him to be more cautious about whom he approached. When C added that the service also offered massages, the woman's interest piqued. She explained that her job required long hours, often leaving her feeling sore and fatigued. Curious, C asked about her profession. The woman handed him a business card that introduced her as Anko Yugu, a private detective. C was immediately intrigued, finding her line of work fascinating. Anko then asked if C was often out at that hour, and he confirmed he was. She followed up by asking if he knew someone named Akihito Aoyama, but C didn't recognize the name at first. When she pulled out a photo of him, mentioning that his friends called him a kin, C recognized the face but hesitated to admit it. Sensing his unease, Anko leaned in closer, briefly checking his pulse. After a moment, she released him, leaving extra cash for their drinks and telling him to keep the change. Before leaving, she instructed C to contact her if he heard anything about Akihito. With a playful smirk, she teased him, saying he should actually try flirting with her the next time they met. When Nazuna found out about the encounter, she was unimpressed, saying she didn't feel like doing anything without a drink. Expecting this reaction, C had already bought her some with the money Anko had given him, instantly lifting her spirits. Later that evening, Maharu called C and Akira, asking them to meet him at school after dark. He wanted them to have fun together one last time, knowing C had stopped attending school, and that opportunities like this might become rare. They climbed over the fence, sneaking in. Once inside, Maharu explained he wanted to create some lasting memories for the three of them. He brought up the urban legend of the 7 school mysteries, the most famous being the ghost haunting the bathrooms. He dared Akira to summon Hanako. Reluctantly, she agreed, calling out in the bathroom. To her surprise, a girl's voice answered back, startling her. Embarrassed and frustrated, Akira shoved Maharu for setting her up. The trio continued exploring the other mysteries, laughing and taking pictures along the way. When they finished, Maharu mentioned one last legend: a teacher who had disappeared from the school 10 years ago and was rumored to appear at night. Akira and C were skeptical, but Maharu insisted they check it out. In the classroom, where the teacher was said to appear, they found someone standing in the dark. The figure turned out to be the missing teacher. He asked why they were there at night, warning them it was dangerous. The teacher seemed unwell and erratic, confessing that tonight was his final night. He blamed them for coming and, without warning, lunged at Akira, declaring he preferred women. Maharu tried to pull him away while C stood frozen, trying to process the scene. Realizing the teacher wasn't human, C grabbed a chair and struck him, forcing him back. Observing the teacher's wild and disheveled state, C quickly deduced he was a vampire, but one who seemed malnourished and distraught. The teacher begged them to run, warning that he couldn't hold himself back any longer. Just then, Anko arrived, having followed a separate lead. The teacher admitted he didn't want to meet anyone but could no longer resist his urges. Anko calmly showed him her neck, provoking him to bite her. A moment later, the teacher recoiled in pain, shouting that her blood tasted awful. Anko explained that she'd been unable to gather much information about the teacher, but now understood his plight. He had resisted feeding for 10 years since becoming a vampire, holding back until he could no longer endure. The teacher confessed he had been tricked into becoming a vampire and hated what he had become. Anko gently reassured him, offering him a way to die as a human. She placed a silver ring in his hand and told him not to resist. As she comforted him, the teacher calmed down. When morning arrived, he turned to dust. Anko solemnly explained that the teacher, who had disappeared a decade ago, had died today as a human, even though he should have passed away naturally. She then reintroduced herself, revealing that she specialized in cases involving people who had gone missing due to vampires. C couldn't shake the question, why had Anko killed the teacher if he was going to die anyway? Anko's response was firm. Should he have spent his last moments as a monster, struggling with what he'd become for 10 years? You don't understand what being a vampire truly means, she said coldly. And I won't let you chase this foolish dream of yours. Her words lingered in C's mind as he returned to Nazuna. She greeted him eagerly, craving his blood as usual, and he reluctantly agreed. But as she hugged him to feed, the image of the teacher's uncontrollable state flashed in his mind. Startled, he pushed her away. Nazuna froze, confused. "What's wrong with you?" she asked. C explained what had happened with the teacher vampire and how he'd lost control. Nazuna listened, then shrugged. He was starving. That's what happens when vampires go too long without feeding. Don't compare me to him, she said, brushing it off. She reassured C that he didn't need to worry about her. Sensing his unease, Nazuna suggested they go for a walk. As they strolled, she casually mentioned hearing that some vampires couldn't accept their new lives and chose to die instead of feeding. 10 years without blood, and they just... Stop, she said. C hesitated, then told her about Anko's warning that she'd prevent him from becoming a vampire. He admitted he hadn't given up on the idea but confessed he was scared for the first time, scared of vampires and scared for Nazuna. He didn't want her to get hurt because of him. Nazuna looked at him for a long moment, then smiled. You're fine now, she said. I'll wait. You can let me have some blood later. Later, C met with Maharu, who immediately asked the tough question. Why do you want to become a vampire, especially after what happened with that one who nearly killed Akira? Maharu pressed. What do you hope to gain? C paused, unsure. He thought about freedom but realized he already had that. It wasn't just about spending time with Nazuna either. He admitted to himself that it wasn't love, as he was trying to force feelings to make the transformation happen. Maharu sighed at C's silence. Think about it, really think. Would you trick people and drink their blood? Or would you end up like that teacher losing control? He asked. You don't have to answer now, but you should figure it out. Later, Nazuna expressed a sudden interest in visiting C's home, and he agreed. As she wandered through his house, she noticed the absence of magazines and asked about it. When the topic shifted to his parents, C explained that his mother was probably working late, and his father had left after their divorce. Nazuna then turned the conversation back to his decision. Have you changed your mind about becoming a vampire? She asked. C thought about Maharu's question and replied, I like the night. That's why I wanted to become a vampire, but after some reflection, he admitted it wasn't just about enjoying himself anymore. As long as it doesn't hurt my friends, I think I'm okay even if I don't become one. I'm already having fun. Nazuna nodded. So why do you like the night? She asked. It's the freedom, C answered. She agreed but added, the night is different because it's not ordinary. But do you feel as excited now as you did your first night out? She pointed out that his nighttime adventures had become routine and warned him that even being a vampire could get boring. Nazuna then apologized for hiding something from him. I've been a vampire for decades, she admitted. It's not all fun. I've been bored most of the time. C frowned. Why only show me the fun parts then? Maybe, she said softly, because I wanted it to feel that way. Determined to get answers, C decided to call Anko and arrange to meet her. She arrived, teasingly asking if he'd called her for something romantic, only to be disappointed when he brought up vampires instead. Anko surprised C by revealing how much she already knew about him. Your full name, your address, that you live with your mom, your grades, your hobby. She trailed off with a smirk. And oh yeah, you've got no experience with romance, but you like girls with large chests. C's face turned red as she continued. You don't keep magazines, but you've saved some pictures on your phone, she added. C stared at her, stunned by her thorough knowledge, while she casually sipped her coffee, clearly amused by his reaction. C was startled by how much Anko seemed to know about him, but she soon smirked and admitted she was bluffing, piecing it together from guesses. Relieved but still curious, C asked why she was so opposed to him becoming a vampire. Anko's tone turned serious. She explained that, from a human perspective, vampires represented a kind of evil that didn't belong in the world. While humans could harm each other, the existence of non-humans who preyed on people was a threat she couldn't ignore. She pressed C, asking if he truly thought he could drink human blood, or if he'd choose to avoid it and suffer the consequences, like the vampire who had starved for 10 years. Anko pointed out that despite all his interactions with Nazuna, he hadn't fallen in love, making her doubt he'd ever become a vampire. She even suggested that he might lack romantic feelings entirely, which wouldn't be an issue if not for his awareness of vampires. Her concern wasn't just about him, though. Anko warned that by associating with Nazuna, he was putting her in danger as well. Both of you could end up dead if this continues, she said bluntly. C was left with a choice: live as a human under Anko's protection, or risk becoming a vampire and facing her wrath. Though Anko assured him that she'd deal with any vampire threats, C couldn't agree that all vampires were evil. He believed they shared similarities with humans, something Anko grudgingly accepted. Before leaving, she called the police, reporting a young boy wandering the streets at night, and warned C to get home before he lost the freedom he cherished so much. Frustrated, C ran off, questions swirling in his mind. He wanted to know more: how Anko killed vampires, why her blood was so unappealing, and how she knew so much. Hearing the approaching police sirens, he hid in a nearby playground. Unsure of where to go, he considered visiting Nazuna but worried about bringing her trouble. Just then, Hatsuka appeared, noticing C hiding. Without much explanation, Hatsuka took him to his home, where 3 adults greeted them with almost childlike excitement. They gushed about behaving well to make Hatsuka proud, but he quickly sent them away, silencing their protests with a cold glare. As Hatsuka went to take a shower, C sat uneasily, wondering who the trio was and if they were related to Hatsuka. When Hatsuka returned, he called for C to grab him a towel, emerging from the bathroom in the nude. To C's shock, he realized Hatsuka wasn't a woman but a man. "You didn't know," Hatsuka said, amused. "I thought Nazuna would have mentioned it. She doesn't tell me much," C replied awkwardly. Meanwhile, Nazuna visited the other vampires, explaining why she thought C wouldn't become a vampire. She pleaded for them to leave him alone, but Nico grew furious, smashing a table. "Did you come prepared to face the consequences?" Nico demanded, hinting that killing C would be an easy solution. Nazuna stood her ground, even threatening to kill Nico if necessary. But Nico calmly asked what C truly meant to Nazuna and how he was different from other humans she'd encountered. Nazuna hesitated, unsure how to answer. Back at Hatsuka's home, C confided in him, expressing doubts about becoming a vampire and sharing what he'd learned about Anko. Hatsuka admitted that vampires knew little about their own kind, including why certain blood tasted better. He explained that Nazuna wasn't hiding information from C, she simply didn't have answers. Hatsuka then mentioned the consequences of Nazuna's actions, revealing that C's safety came at a cost. "The punishment will hit Nazuna harder than you," he said. To protect her, Hatsuka offered to make C his family, emphasizing that becoming a vampire under him would save Nazuna. C refused, still determined to fall in love with Nazuna. Hatsuka shrugged, admiring his stubbornness. "But are you ready for the consequences?" he asked. C left to find Nico and the others. When he arrived, Nico informed him that Nazuna had just left, adding cryptically that she might not be able to speak properly soon. Alarmed, C demanded to know what they'd done to her, but Nico assured him it was her choice. Ignoring their warnings, C set off to find Nazuna. Nazuna, unsure of herself, wandered aimlessly, wondering if C hated her. She reflected on her simple life of walking at night, drinking blood, and playing video games. C eventually found her at the vending machine where they'd first met. She looked away when he called out, but he approached her, insisting she was the reason his once boring life had changed. "You made me feel alive, Nazuna," he said. "Are you bored now?" Nazuna admitted she'd been having fun and had forgotten how dull her life used to be. She confessed that she'd acted as if she knew everything, but in truth, their time together had been as new for her as it was for him. They realized they were both bad at being alone. C promised to keep her entertained and vowed to fall in love with her. In return, Nazuna pledged to become a vampire worth loving. She leaned in and kissed him, sealing their promise to continue their journey together. Thanks for sticking around this long, my fellow men of culture. Don't forget to share your favorite moments from this story and subscribe for more awesome content.